Good afternoon, everyone. This is Tom Mitchell from Flagship Solutions Group, and we're here to talk to you today about anatomy of a ransomware attack. We've done several of you may have joined us in prior broadcasts going over some of the security solutions, and backed by popular demand, we're bringing Frank Welder back to take us through this. But before we begin, I wanted to tell you, those of you who don't know about Flagship Solutions Group, I just wanted to take you through a couple of slides to give you who we are. We're located out of Boca Raton, Florida, but we have skills really all over the country, both technical skills, which we're very tech heavy and delivery heavy. And then we have some sales skills too that we align to our accounts and so forth to service them. Some of our solution and our methodology to get involved with our clients. One of the things that we do first is we assess. We come in, we talk to you about what your challenges are. How to work with those challenges, and then we'll put together some recommendations, and then we'll go into delivery mode. We'll install, and then we'll support. So we're very, very services oriented. We are very, we take a customized approach. So we're very flexible to customize solutions to your installations, just because of we know that one size doesn't fit all when we're talking IT solutions. This is our managed services approach here. The little chart on the right-hand side, basically we will help you with tasks, or we will completely help you take something completely off your hands and help you with that. And a lot of times when we work with our clients will want us to manage it for them, and then maybe they'll scale it back, or vice versa. We'll do a few tasks and then they'll want us to do more and more. So we are very good at scaling up, scaling back, depending upon what those needs are. I'm not going to go through this eye chart, but you can see that our managed services cover all kinds of things, infrastructure, on the cloud, on-prem, anywhere in between. We look at, we have a contract management practice where we can help you manage perhaps the various maintenance contracts that you have. We do network, server monitoring, we manage backups, we provide infrastructure as a service. The root of all this, though, is all the infrastructure that we use is IBM. So we are a premier IBM business partner. We deliver IBM solutions, and we pretty much hang our hat with IBM solutions. And then with that, this little picture here, that's me on the right. I'm the crazy guy on the right, and then the good-looking guy on the left there is Frank Welder. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Frank, and let you take us through the anatomy of a ransomware attack.
You know, Tom, I always wonder, why am I so blurry in these pictures?
I think it was a blurry evening.
Oh, that might have been it. That could have been it. Yeah, maybe. Hey, so Tom, it says that yeah, you had to stop sharing for me to start sharing. So I'm going to start sharing a little bit here. Because I'm a giver today, right? I'm a giver today, right? So I appreciate every time that we do one of these webinars, Tom, that you feel free that we've got to have that picture displayed somehow. I'm very excited about that.
Can't go on without it.
Right? I mean, nothing about it out there, shall we say. Hey, so thanks for having me back again, because you know how I love doing these types of sessions. And as an update, right, most of you know that I am a full-time RVer, and I'm at my, let's call it my summer quarters now, right? My summer quarters happen to be up here on our family farm in North Dakota. So you know me, I'm the cyber guy who's in the RV, and away we go rolling around. But today I want to talk about something that I think is near and dear to us. And I tried to pull up the the report that I wanted to hit on this one. Senior vice president at my company, Tech Data, just linked something as part of his LinkedIn profile that said that the amount of malware and ransomware attacks has decreased over the last quarter to previous quarter as well as last year at the same time, right? So there's somebody as an organization that supposedly tracks this type of stuff, and I haven't had time to dig into the credibility of it and things like that. But I think this is an important piece, right? If this article is to be true, and I believe it is true, right? Because the boss usually is pretty good about vetting that kind of stuff out, right? About 30% of a decrease in ransomware attacks associated with that. And I think that's important for all of us, right? And the article went on to say that there are a couple of reasons for it, right? So when everybody had to go to a remote workforce type environment, we all got a little more diligent about watching that wire and put together tools out there about what watches that wire and what constitutes an attack and what's the violation of our security policy. So I think good, bad, or indifferent, right? Whatever conditions caused this, it has caused a uptick in the security posture of many of you, the customer community. So congratulations to all of us on that one, right? And I think it's sessions like this that talk about what does an attack look like and what kind of tools do you use to thwart or combat or even find that attack, right? There's a statistic I typically had been using called the days from infection to detection within many organizations. And there was a report, an annual report called the Verizon Breach Report. It'll still come out every year, right? That talks about the time from infection to detection for many organizations it started off 4 years ago as like 142, 163 days, right? I'm like, good Lord, that's a long time for somebody to be snooping around in your network, right? Now we'll talk about zero-day attacks and being able to discover zero-day attacks that they in real time as they happen. And that's going to be our conversation today. When we take a look at the anatomy of a malware attack, we'll actually run through one as part of our discussion today. And what I would like to do is a couple of housekeeping pieces, if we so could. During this session, Tom Mitchell, my presentation buddy, will be monitoring the Q&A session, right? So if you have any questions during our discussion here, feel free to pop them into the Q&A. I think we've got everybody else on mute. So if you do have questions like that, you can raise your hand. Doesn't help because it doesn't show up on the screen with the presentation, right? But pop it over in the Q&A, and if Tom needs me to take a look at it because it's like a burning question for the context at the time, right? We'll take it right there. Otherwise, we'll take it as they come, shall we say, right?
And Frank, they can also use the chat if they want to throw anything out on chat. We'll watch that as well.
Well, I appreciate that, but if you're going to ask a question, I prefer Q&A because it automatically keeps it with the transcript when we send it off, right? So you can say that, but you know me, I'm usually all about choice, but today let's keep it in the Q&A.
Okay.
I can't believe I'm being that type of a sucker on that one. My apologies. Let's continue on with this thing, right? So just so we're clear that I'm not talking about any other type detection module associated with this. I, like Tom, am a tried and true IBM infrastructure type person, and a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about today is going to revolve around IBM's QRadar, right? I was thinking, gosh, maybe we should just sugarcoat it, not talk about what the tool I'm going to use as part of my ransomware attack. This is the tool that I use all the time for being able to do defensive and offensive security pieces, and I do it because, well, one, I work for the IBM security division of Tech Data, so I guess I should be doing that, right? But from either Forrester or Gartner, #1 SIM for advanced threat defense associated with that. And a lot of the threats that we're talking about today aren't the simple, hey, I got a Trojan coming in and I'm going to try and do something associated with it. These are really advanced persistent threats, right? One thing relying on another thing, to actually get you to either give up your information and lock your, that either puts me in a position as a bad guy to take your data or prevent you from accessing your data, right? Those are the two things that I'm trying to do. So in our discussion today, I'm going to use QRadar and some QRadar products to make it happen. And in my demo environment, I've got it running out of our our cyber range in Phoenix, but whether it's on cloud or on-prem or hybrid or host, whatever it is, right? Same tool to be able to do that. And we're going to use this for a couple of different things, right? We're going to use events and flows and a threat intelligence feed to actually help find this anatomy, or when we dissect this piece of malware, this ransomware attack, to dissect it, right? So I'm going to use this tool to be able to represent it, because this tool helps me with a couple of things, right? In today's environment, right, we really struggle with these old stealthy adversaries and the critical vulnerabilities. What's critical within what, insider threats and privacy risks associated with it, right? And it's not. And this struggle seems to continue on, right? I mean, as long as I've been in IT, we've struggled from a security standpoint on this one, but we're going to continue to struggle with. Let's try to see if we can't figure out some tools to help us in different areas, right? So this is what we think our current state is, right? We've got enough data, right? If I think about all the different point solutions I have for security solutions, you know, I shouldn't be getting attacked at all, right? Nobody should be successful, and yet we have some issues associated with it, right? The numbers tell us that, right? So it's not that we don't have enough data associated with it. I think sometimes we lack some of the insights associated with it, right? And so there's some numbers along the side, right, of the alerts that are generated. In this particular study, 44% of the alerts were not even investigated. Oh, don't have to worry about it, right? Ask Target about what happens when you ignore a critical update on a POS machine, a point of sale machine, and somebody starts scamming credit card information right from inside your store, right? That's why you want to investigate those threats. 54% of legitimate alerts aren't remediated. Let me use a different term there. Remediated, aren't fixed, aren't addressed, aren't updated, the hole's not plugged, right? Goodness gracious, right? Why do you think that is, right? Is that, you know, in this particular study, it was lack of priority. Which ones should be fixed words? Because which ones tie in higher to our asset we have inside our organization, right? But 36% say keeping up with alerts is a top concern, right? And it should be, right? Because the bad guys are going to try to buffalo us, right? They're going to, you know, do some point and switch associated with that, some bait and switch associated with that. You know, you think something's coming over here while they're, you know, lock up a system over here while they're sneaking information out of the system over here on this side, right? So that's why we got to keep up with the alert system to make that happen. So when we start talking about threat detection, and ransomware attacks are all about threat detection, right? Because those are going to be, most cases, start outside your organization, involve compromising somebody or something inside your organization, and then how we either lock it up via encryption or a process, or try to exfiltrate it so we can monetize it in some other way associated with it. So we take a look at this from a threat detection standpoint. I'm going to have 3 basic pillars of threat detection that I'm going to want my tools to be able to provide. First and foremost, I want to have a tool, a capability to be able to see everything. I know it sounds pie in the sky and things like that, but this is that whole single pane of glass associated with it. And if you think about an APT, an advanced persistent threat, or a malware attack associated with that, it's going to start sometimes on a file server or a mail server associated with that, and some user clicking on a link or requesting something to be downloaded inside the organization. And then that thing does something, right? It starts a process, it does something at times to take over the machine, and then communicate with a command and control server, right? If you think about that, I'm talking network, infrastructure, email, and endpoint that I have to be able to, just as an example, I need to be able to see everything and have a system that has some automation and some intelligence in it that says, oh, I understand how a Windows client or a Linux client and a Cisco firewall or a Juniper firewall and these other devices, I know how they're supposed to work together and what is normal traffic for that, or normal states of being with that versus abnormal states of beings with that. Because now when I can see everything and I can correlate and do the automation and intelligence associated, I can then become proactive in how I address which threats are of a larger concern to my organization. If I've got a threat hitting and knocking on my customer information system or my customer database versus a threat trying to come in via my wireless side in my lobby, right? I'll know I'll have a priority that I can then become proactive associated with that. So this is how we put it together as from an IBM QRadar piece, right? I get that complete visibility, right? I want endpoints and network and data and users and threats and configuration and vulnerabilities and application. I want all of those things to be able to see so I can then correlate which are the violations of our security policies associated with that. I want to then prioritize them, automatic investigations, and proactive hunting associated with it. So in our discussion today, we're really going to take a look at what a ransomware or malware attack looks like and how along the way we're going to use IBM QRadar to see it, right? To see it and to detect it right off the bat. All right, so let's take a look at our example company today. Pretty simple company. I'm going to get a drink of water while I take a look at the Q&A site. Oh, you know the best thing about that water? It's wet and it's cold. I love that. So in our example company, before the attack starts, right? We've got some, before the attack, we'll get some unknown events and we'll create some new logs inside QRadar. But in this environment, right, I've got the bad go. Oh, let me find my laser pointer. Goodness gracious knows, I love my laser pointer. We've got the bad guy internet, Acme Corporation, and we've got some Win7, Juniper Firewall, DHCP, DNS associated with that. That's sitting out there as part of my infrastructure. Pretty common setup for a lot of our customers, right? And so when we take a look at this thing, right, before the attack starts, right, so I've got the bad guy out there infecting machines on the internet with some piece of malware associated with that, some piece of malware. We'll say that this piece of malware, the first goal of this piece of malware is to download itself and start a process that then begins communication with the bad guy so they can download more malware associated with that. So we see before the attack starts, we see from a QRadar perspective, it recognizes these new devices that are communicating on the network, and because of that, it automatically creates the log sources for it. So we talk about that as a way, right, for QRadar when it wants to see everything. It'll say, I not only see everything, but I see things that I don't have access to yet. So I should start creating these types of log sources for our organization, and it'll automatically do that with inside the organization. And then what it does with that is it puts these assets into my QRadar system, right? So I've got now this QRadar system could be sitting on premise, it could be sitting out in the cloud, it could be a managed service someplace else. But this is this whole asset database. This helps me figure out who's on my network, who's communicating with who associated with that. So every time my tool for threat detection sees a new host or a new service or a new machine, it's going to start gathering information about that and keep it in my asset database. And it's going to gather great information about it, like when it was last seen, who was using it, if it was logged in, what the username was associated with it. Just as part of its process, it gathers up those pieces of information. Right. So in order to start, we're going to have one additional piece of information. Right? We got our QRadar and our asset database and our rules engine and things like that. We've also going to implement another thing into my environment to be able to catch this anatomy of this ransomware attack or of this malware attack. We're going to introduce this thing called a Q&I server, QRadar Network Insights. And what a QRadar Network Insights does, it helps me do deep network packet inspection in real time. Yeah. So now, not only can I say, QRadar has a list of compromised hosts and bad servers and all this other stuff, and then Q&I in real time can file hash a connection, right? So if somebody downloads something, it'll be able to automatically do file hashing associated with it. So now that we've got all these components in place, now we're ready to start our attack. Right, so the bad guy's all poised over here. We got a user sitting over here that's going to go out and check their mail. So in this case, the attack starts. So the attacker sends a phishing email to the company's email server, and then the phishing mail attack is detected by QNI. As soon as the mail server connects to that invested piece, right, that conversation is monitored in real time by QRadar. So even before the user interacts, right, it'll detect that the mail server connected to this and downloaded a piece of mail that had a piece of malware associated with it. Now you may ask your question, well, how would this system understand what a piece of malware looks like? So every, in real time, QRadar, and that's QNI, because that's a part of the process, connects to a interactive threat intelligence feed. So let's say this is a zero-day attack. It's a new piece of malware associated with it. And that's the one that really scares a lot of the folks we talk to, right? It's in that zero-day attack, the bad guys create this, put this out there, and there's no detection mechanism for this at that time. So the threat intelligence folks find that stuff, even in zero-day attacks, and publish it out. And publish it out in QRadar's case in a thing called a building block. So there's a building block that says, bad malware hash, right? That sounds terrible when I say it like that, but bad file or malware hash, right? And so it got that information from the threat feed, and as soon as it saw it come across, even in a zero-day piece, it said, whoop, there's a piece of malware, right? I investigated that conversation between my mail server and that malware server, and because of that, QRadar then creates an offense. And the offense, let me see if I can't pull that up right away, is, in this case, it is offense 195. Hold. I've got it here somewhere, or at least I had it here somewhere. Oh, it might be on page 2. So this is my demo system, and this are all of my offenses that are going on. There we go. So here's where it sees. So in offense 195, I'm going to pull up offense 195, and it says, in a potentially infected workstation downloads data from a critical server, right? But it first started off here with this access to the DGA domain. So that's the domain analytics controller right there, right? So that's where QNI first started. It said, hey, we've got a piece of malware being thrown about in our environment, right? So in that area, QRadar already caught it. And from that, if you follow along, I could have told QRadar to send up an alert, or I could have told via API to tell the mail server to reject that, right? But QRadar caught it and notified somebody, right? So there's that first notification we had associated with it. Now, let's say that it didn't happen that way. And so in that, the malware is here. The user now downloads the mail from the server down to its local device. And then the user opens the attached document containing the that zero-day malware attack. And then QRadar opens an offense due to Sysmon reporting an unusual process creation, right? So we've got a tool out there monitoring not only the Windows security event log, but also Sysmon. And we've got a rule that says anytime an end user workstation creates a new process and is reported via Sysmon, we should notify that's an alert, right? Because that's a violation of our security policy. Because that right there is saying, I got something infecting my system, right? And so QRadar was able to see that and create an offense that says, hey, Sysmon has been done here, right? And we can see that in our QRadar environment. Oh, let me go back to my QRadar environment under my all offenses piece. And I can show you that QRadar then said, well, it chained these things together. So I'm going to show it to you all in one, shall we say, right? So it said, a scheduled task has been created on a compromised host, right? So right there is where it says Sysmon has reported the task associated with that. So now, if I wanted to be able to see that type of an event, I can scroll through here. I can see all 1,430 events that were being processed at this time. And I know that it just happened 2 hours and 40, it's still happening right now, right? But I can also go in and see this one and say, PowerShell malicious use. So show me the events that make up the PowerShell malicious use, right? So I'll see an individual event here that says when PowerShell was launched, and with the encode command, and actually the complete event sitting there as well, right? So I can very granularly get down to an individual event or a group of events that are happening in real time and show how that malware is being detected by my threat detection system. And notice it's happening in real time, not happening in non-real time, I guess is the word I was looking for there, shall we say, right? So now I've got sysmon, I got a process created over there, right? And thus far, it's just malware, right? So this little piece of malware, guess what? This little piece of malware was just a keyboard tracker, just a keyboard logger. It wanted to know if this user was going to, right? So as a keyboard logger, all right, well, I'm sorry, when it installed a piece of malware, it communicated with the command and control server, and then it started downloading additional pieces of software, right? And that first additional piece of software was a keyboard logger, right? And then it launched another process with the keyboard logger. And you see that here, right? When we look at this, message, right? Process had been started, and another process been started. So that's where the initial piece of malware got installed, and that's where the keyboard logger got installed, right? So now I've got keyboard logging installed in my environment, right? And then I got now I've got this keyboard logger, a tracker for being able to track user credentials. QRadar noticed that and extends the existing offense with this new observation that says, hey, not only do we have a compromised host communicating with a bad guy, and they launched a command via psexec, and they installed pieces of software, QRadar caught all of those pieces, and it's continue enriching, right? So enriching that offense, saying, hey, I've correlated that these things are happening in our environment as well. So when we start adding those things together, that's that whole, not only is this a piece of malware, but this is an advanced persistent threat that I now need to be looking out for, because now I've got it, now that it downloaded these different pieces of these different tools, it's like an octopus spreading its tendrils inside my network, trying to figure out where I can use these credentials at, where would it make sense. And it kept going and said, and so then now this machine is now using its in its compromised state, is trying to find all of the servers on the network that it has access to. And it's going to do that via a tool called maybe either NAC or network ping or observant or different things associated with that to try and find out, oh, is your database server on port 25? Let me try admin as your username and password and see if I get access into the database environment, right? So now QRadar is seeing this machine communicating with servers that it's never communicated with before. And then that's a violation of QRadar's user behavior analytics, right? So it just starts hitting those servers and trying to find out things associated with that, right? But then with its credentials scammed and things like that, it successfully logs into a server holding our PCI data, right? So privileged information associated with that. And here's where we go from a ransomware attack to a breach, right? So now I've got this thing accessing my PCI server, right? It found the credentials or had the credentials, it found the server on the network, it logs into the PCI server and then begins to download data from the server via, in this case, it's going to use a technique where it puts address resolution packets, right? That's going to put big DNS packets out there. So instead of 53K DNS packets, I'm seeing 2 meg DNS packets going out over my network. And QNI notifies and sees that I've got fat packets being sent out, and it investigates and looks at the data inside of those packets and said, oh, hey, guess what? This is privileged information. So now QNI sees that information again, sees that flow of that conversation between that end user workstation and the bad guys, and says, this is not supposed to be happening at all. So QRadar is going to notify of this data exfiltration. So it's going to list out a report that says, hey, you got bad guys breaching your environment. Here's what's going on associated with that. So what I want to be able to show associated with this is that QRadar picked up every offense along the way. It noticed, it saw, it correlated that we had an attack starting with the initial download of mail to the server over here. Now, I'm not saying that the individual point products that this organization put into place didn't catch it, but it wouldn't have been able to do the correlation, right? When we think about advanced persistent threats, even this as an advanced persistent threat, there were different places along the way that human interaction had to take a look at. Okay, I'm looking at my network console, my endpoint detection response environment. I'm looking at my Active Directory security event log. I'm looking at Sysmon infrastructure keys. I'm looking at network traffic. It had to be able to provide that, not only see everything, provide that correlation of everything associated with it as well. So when we take a look at why these advanced persistent threats, these malware pieces and these ransomware pieces are successful, well, think about how they launched that, right? The bad guys launched this, they put it on as many compromised hosts as they possibly can, and then send out phishing emails by the boatload, right? Because here's the thing. Remember, the bad guys only really want to do two things to you. Well, three things. They not want to just embarrass you, right? They're ego activists or something like that, right? Now, I'm not discounting those folks, just not for the purpose of our conversation, right? But they're going to try and make sure that they are going to either install a piece of malware which does like an encryption of your devices, right? Of the stuff that it found access to, right? So maybe the malware, and then instead of downloading this information, maybe the malware was, hey, let's start an encryption process on this server instead, right? So that was them. That was the bad guys denying you access to your data, right? Or what we're doing here, we're on the backside exfiltrating this out of the organization, low and slow over non-standard ports, right? So they're not going to deny you access to your data. They may be looking for a way to monetize, to sell it, to embarrass you, to do something else with it associated with it, right?
Hey, Frank, we have a question. We have a question.
Okay, let's take a look at that.
Yeah, Singly asked a question. Actually, he's got a couple of questions here. Does this QRadar have a feature for baseline scanning of all network devices such as Windows, Macs, Linux, Cisco, switches, routers, Xerox, HP printers, baseline scanning as a compliance finding by our client auditors?
Okay, so that's interesting the way that you said that, right? So this is a, hey, can you discover everything that's in my environment? Right, I think that's what that was going for there, right? Could you discover everything that's in my environment? And so it's interesting that you bring that up, because I think that might have ticked off as part of that whole asset database that we were talking about earlier, right? And you're absolutely correct. Every time QRadar sees everything from a network device to an individual workstation, it's going to create asset IDs associated with it, right? And so here's an example of stuff by IP addresses, and then if it finds, so let's say that you have given as part of the scan, right? So as part of my scan, you say, hey, I want to be able to discover, right? So I'll click on my server discovery function, right? And under server discovery, I can tell QRadar to go out and find database servers, DHCP servers, DNS, LDAP servers, mail servers, right? So I've got a definition of stuff that I can tell QRadar to find. Or I can say, hey, let's define something else, right? So with this in place, right? So QRadar would listen passively on the network, and every time it saw an asset on an event log or a flow, it would automatically update it. But you could also tell it to scan your entire network. Now we ask folks to do this when they do an initial installation of QRadar, as well as then on a weekly basis after that. It could be daily if you wanted to. That then goes out and finds stuff as it puts it out there, right? So this is just a way to be able to find stuff. So the answer to your question is yeah. We can have it scan everything, and then once it's into the database, then we can start doing reports, right? What was the stuff discovered, right? What we usually get associated with this is once I discover this stuff and I have an asset profile, is then how do I do like vulnerability scanning, or how would I add vulnerability information into this to be able to say, am I patched, am I updated, is this a bigger risk versus something else? That's usually what we get. I know that's an extension of the question you were probably looking at associated with this, right? So what we've done is under the VA scan function, right, vulnerability scan, is we've taken it so that the VA, the scanner involved in QRadar can go out and tie this against a vulnerability database and say, of the Windows workstations that I found, here are the vulnerabilities associated with the operating system or applications, right? So you can get QRadar to do the vulnerability scanning, but what I like better is there's, as much as I love QRadar, right, their scanner, not so good, right? Whereas Nessus and Tenable have got great scanners, right? So the smartest thing they did was they were able to say, well, I will import and control all those Nessus stuff and put it into my single pane of glass on this side, right? So I could import all of my vulnerability information and tie it into my asset information this way in this state. And now I can do stuff with it, right? I can report against it. I can run rules against it. I can see if it changes, how long it was there. You know, I can run all sorts of different things associated with it. So great question. Thanks for asking, right? Because that really did help out, right? Because we talk about this asset database, but never do we really dive into it to the point that it really should have been dove into, right? So I'm just going to click on an example here. This is on my internal network, right? And it'll start listing out great information about this asset then, right? Not just, you know, who it was, who owns it, or different things associated with that, but when it communicated, who was last logged in, vulnerability information, all of that stuff, puts it right into your environment. All right, so great question. Let's see, where were we on our discussion? We were just finishing up actually on how QRadar was able to see that. I see all of those things inside of the environment. Yep, that's it. That is exactly it, Tom. So that covers the content we really wanted that I really wanted to talk about today, with regard to how QRadar and vulnerability attacking. You just take a look at how we're being attacked today with malware and ransomware, right? How a tool, just a simple tool that monitors everything, can help you detect it along every phase of the way and then stop that persistent threat from going on inside your environment. Hey, Tom, with that, I'm going to turn it back over to you for you to take us home and land the bird. Tom? You're on mute.
I was on mute. Hang on. I'm going to unshare you there, and I'll bring up my presentation here.
I think I have to quit. Oh, I did stop sharing. Oh, good.
I unshared you.
Oh, look at Tom flexing his muscle.
Yeah. All right. Let me go here from the current slide. Okay. So a couple of things, and Singh, thank you for asking that question too. One of the things that we can do, if you want to have some follow-on discussions, we can, sit down with you individually and go through some of your challenges that you have, and talk about how we could help solve those. So I appreciate the feedback that you had in the question. So a couple of more charts, and then we'll go away. I've got an offer for you as well. So we want to help you pave the way to a comprehensive security program. Getting security is not an overnight thing. It is definitely a journey. There are so many aspects of it. We listed a few here: applications, network, fraud, identity access, data, mobility, you know, security around your mobility, security around all your endpoints. And so we can help with every one of those. And we'll bring in IBM where we need more extensive help that perhaps we otherwise can't deliver. We look at security as a holistic approach. So we look at it, you know, the end game here is to, you know, lock down all your borders, whether they're physical or virtual. How do we lock those down, and how can we orchestrate a security system where when you do have a breach or malware attack like Frank's taken us through, how do we act on it? What tools can we use to act on it, automate the responses that we might have, etc. So we take that approach. What's next? And here's our offer. And we'll get these charts out to you when after this, but we can do a security risk assessment free, where we come in and go through some of your processes, and we can do deliver a report to you that shows where your vulnerabilities might be. The web links on this page here will give you a sample report of what that looks like, so what the output would look like. And then there's another link here to register for a risk assessment for us to begin that. Again, this is a little bit of a redundant chart, but we will look at all of these areas in the security assessment. And then again, you can look at the sample report. If you're interested in doing it, please contact us. We would be more than happy to either have an informal discussion with you or go through the full security risk assessment. A couple of ways to connect with us. You can see we have several email addresses there. You can connect with us that way. Please visit our website too, out at flagshipsg.com. The SG stands for Solutions Group. But we've just gone through a full overhaul of our website. We're pretty proud of it. We find it's very easy to navigate, perhaps easy to navigate to what you're particularly interested in. But if you can't find what you're looking for there, please reach out to us, and we'll get to helping you there. With that, I think we've got 15 minutes left. We could open up the mics, or if you just want to simply type in and ask a question, you're welcome to do that as well. Let's see if I know how to open up the mic. Let's see. See, Theo raised your hand. Theo, go ahead. I think I've unmuted you.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, yeah, I was just thinking it was an excellent job, Frank. I thought you did a fantastic job there. I've watched these phishing attacks. Actually had one happen to me not long ago, which was very interesting, where I tried to turn my Echo speaker into my Alexa into a speaker. Got routed to a web address that said you needed to download a particular file, and obviously it only downloaded 90%. And then a little chat box comes up and the lady says, call this number. I should have realized right quick what was going on. So anyway, all they were trying to do there is trying to get access to my credentials and do a phishing attack for me. So this stuff is real. It happens to all of us way more often than you really realize.
Thanks, Theo. Yeah, that's so with Internet of Things, right? Like that, your Echo, even those can get compromised. So that's part of those endpoints that we were talking about earlier as well.
Yeah, it sure is.
Yeah. Thanks, Theo. Okay. Anyone else? I don't see any other questions. I think we'll conclude 15 minutes earlier and give 15 minutes back of your time in your day. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out with us. Thank you.